Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day. Well, welcome back to day 452 of the news. I had to look real quick. It's my favorite night of the week, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we've got some pretty big news. One, the Wagner unit is confirmed they are leaving Bakhmut at this moment. And two, the Ukrainian generals are claiming that they are going to be encircling Bakhmut almost entirely, probably within the next few days. It's massive news, and on top of that, it is Sunday night, and y'all know what that means. It is the Sunday fundraiser, and we picked out our tried and true legend at this point of a fundraiser, especially for this nonprofit, which is our favorite, Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders is an amazing nonprofit that has been able to help out in Ukraine ever since the very beginning of the war 452 days ago, and has helped to save countless thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Ukrainian lives. And we are running that fundraiser again tonight as it rockets on its way up towards the $5,000 goal. Now, real quick, I'm going to have to go over here and try and grab the video itself, and y'all are going to hear a little reverb for a second right there. Let me mute that so that way I can actually see the total. Right now, the total on the fundraiser is $1,726, and that was raised ever since the stream went live 13 minutes ago. And I gotta say, absolutely amazing, and hopefully we can make it on to $5,000 as quickly as possible. The Lee Spring Army has never missed a goal, and as of tonight, to get y'all the exact number, because we always have to talk about the fundraisers, they are the pride of this channel. The fundraisers in total, ever since the very beginning of the first one we ever ran, has raised $956,693. We are within little over $40,000 at the moment away from the grand total of $1 million across all fundraisers. And it's absolutely unbelievable to think that the Lee Spring Army is still powering through these fundraisers like absolute juggernauts. And before long, we'll be making it to $1 million total raised over all of our fundraisers. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the news. Also, Matthew, I hope you see that one right there. But with that, we're going to be moving on into our news and starting off in Moscow, where we can see that the Russian state media has actually claimed that there are ammo shortages, and they are across the board. And so, with that, here's the clip. And also I'm going to be reading off the translations down at the bottom. Ammo hunger questionably exists. Not everywhere, but it does exist. This shouldn't be happening. There should be enough ammo for everyone. The Wagnerites, the defense ministry, was surplus, so they don't have to think about it. There are some hereditary diseases. They pass from one generation to the next. And, oh my god, Matthew.
Goodness, Trister put in 1,000. Did you see that?
He just put in $1,000. Oh my god!
Dang, and also Mark put in 500 earlier. By the way, we got to call that one out as well.
Oh man, you know what we gotta do? We gotta call them out, and it's absolutely great to see that Mark, Colonel of the LSA. I think he's still a Colonel, Matthew, even again tonight.
No, he's a general now. He's
a general. We finally got him that promotion. And also, Trister 1 just threw in 1,000. We're all the way up to $3,121 right now on the fundraiser. Absolutely unbelievable. Sorry for pausing this, but it is the fundraiser night. The whole goal of Sundays is to always try and help fundraise as much as possible for these nonprofits to help to save lives. So that's more so the priority. But we're getting back to the video. In the War of 1812, the Crimean War, World War I, we've been dealing with this basically in every war. Just from what has been publicly announced, there has been more than one firing of the people responsible for supplying the army. We hope that as a result of these firings and changes, someone will come who can fix it in a way that we don't have to keep... Dang, she talks fast sometimes. Let me go back real quick and grab that one. That we don't have to keep hearing about it. This shouldn't be happening. Our guys are risking their lives and blood every day. We're sitting here at home. If our industry is not keeping up, let's all get a grip. Ask anyone, aren't we all ready to come help for 2 hours after work? No. If it's needed for the duration, but no one says so, they say that everything is fine. If you ask military correspondents, it's not really fine or far from fine. Let's remove this out of our political discourse. We, the people, are ready to help. And you know something that's interesting, Matthew, is that the Russians, throughout the whole entirety of this war, have been saying, oh, bled, the West, they cannot keep up their support for Ukraine because they may have the money, but they don't have the guns and ammo. And they're the first ones to actually admit on TV that they're the ones that are running out of ammo.
Yeah, they don't know. We can literally just keep printing our money and give it to the defense sector, and they'll create the goods if we send them the money.
Man, I'm telling you, it's crazy, especially for Western countries when compared to Russia. Russia doesn't just have to put money into the equation. They have to put workers, factories, and so on into it as well. Here in the United States, the ammo and the equipment nearly just materializes to such a large degree that most of the time we just have to take a good amount of it and throw it into a pretty much graveyard in the desert because there's no way for us to even use the stuff. Meanwhile, in Russia on state TV, they're talking about, we don't have the ammo to keep everyone running everywhere at all times. And it's good to know that they're finally admitting it, at least on state TV. It's been something we've seen forever now, but great to see they're finally admitting it. So we're going to let the video continue. I want to speak up for the industry. Oh, we got our boy Mao Zedong over here. Look at him. He's dressed up like Chairman Mao.
Oh my God. He is wearing the whole suit and everything.
Hold up. We got to go find He's got the Chairman Mao fit going on right here.
Look at him, a wannabe dictator on TV.
Dude, this man sat there and interrupted and he said, I too have a little red book. And then it pans over to him. Oh my God. It's literally the same clothes. The same. Look at that. That is literally the exact same.
He's got his hands behind his back and everything.
Oh my God, it's literally like this painting. How sad. That's so sad. This man is literally pulling a Chairman Mao. Next thing you know, he's about to break out into a choral lyric singing about the East is red or something like that. But anyways, we're getting back to the video. I don't know if it's about the industry or ordering. They've increased it a lot. They're producing a lot. They're working to a maximum capacity. If you need 500 machines, but you only have 300, you can't add 200 more to your production line in one day. The ammo hunger happens when there is a disparity between combat goals and allocated resources. Pardon me, Comrade General, but I think that I'm formulating it with precision. It's very important for three factors to be coordinated, so that last summer's tragedy is not repeated. When the HIMARS and started to strike, dang man, they are talking so fast. When HIMARS appeared and started to strike our storage depots, we should store it correctly, formulate our goals, and provide supplies correctly. We need the logistics, collecting and disseminating info, and precise military calculations. On our end, we will do whatever is needed to help. Yes, it's exactly what I wanted to say. Having said this, we have to acknowledge that on the other side, there are dozens of countries that are supplying ammunition to one poor Zelensky. We should remember that we're standing alone every time we're outraged, publicly or privately, and we want to get indignant. How can it be? How can't we get it fixed? We should remember whom we're fighting and why. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but a little look into the Russian mindset, at least on Russian state TV at this point. And I gotta say, it's hilarious to see that our boy, the devil here, he sat there and refuted the woman who's actually the head of Russia Today, if y'all didn't know, she's actually the CEO of Russia Today, refuted her and said, oh no, we're producing more, but at the same time our assembly lines can't keep up, and that's why ammo disparities happen. It's like, you just said two things at one time. This man really is Chairman Mao. He's saying two things that are completely opposite at the same time. And so with that,
Man, so Soloyev be like standing in the middle talking about, all this designer got me drip drip.
man, he'd be talking,
Man, he's got that commie equality drip going on.
man, he's got that we are going to seize the means of productions drip going on here. he's got the rise up against the proletariat masses kind of drip going on.
Yes.
Right? He's got that.
That stomp out the opposition type drip.
Hang on, he's got that. We're going to go and take someone out to the street and hang them because they don't like a mango kind of drip going on right here. He's about to sit there and go, mangoes are next to the vine, and people are going to go, oh, there's God's fruit now. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip. Once again, hilarious to see Russian state TV. One of the few times we show it nowadays, because usually the clips are like 8 minutes long. This one was about 3, so it wasn't that long. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. We're going to be moving on from Volodymyr Solovyov, also called the Devil, here on this channel, and we're now going to be moving on into Sevastopol. Interestingly enough, Sevastopol had a massive blackout last night. We don't know why either, because there was no reported explosions in the area, and we don't really know how the energy grid was performing as well, but from these pictures from Sevastopol, we can see large quadrants of the city are without any power whatsoever. The only lights you're seeing here on the street are from cars' taillights and headlights. There is no electricity throughout a decent amount of Sevastopol, at least as far as last night went. We don't know why. We don't know what happened to the power grid. We don't know if this is a rolling blackout because of some ability for the Russians to not produce enough electricity for the city of Sevastopol. We're not really sure, but it was very interesting to note and very wild to see that entire parts of Sevastopol went into a blackout last night. With that, we're going to be moving on from this clip. And also, another thing I like to say is that blackouts, of course, do happen. Even here in Alabama, they happen a good while. And to not tell you too much of our personal life, but back when we lived in another part of Alabama, a thunderstorm came through one time. It was a rather severe one, and it knocked out our power for 2 whole weeks. So it's not completely out of the question, even in normal circumstances, for a blackout to occur. But if you see the weather, at least in these pictures, it's cloudy, yes, but it's kind of normal at this part of the year. It's not like a torrential storm. And even looking at the picture here, where you can see the trees don't have any limbs that have been ripped off. You can't really see any debris on the ground either from what would have appeared to have been a pretty sizable storm. So it's most likely out of the question that it was some kind of a storm that knocked out the power grid. It was something else, maybe even saboteurs that had conducted this activity against the Russians and led to this power outage. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the port city of Sevastopol and on up into the area of Oleski, just on the other side of the Dnipro River near Kherson, where we saw that an explosion had been seen, but we don't know what caused it. It was fairly sizable as well. We can see smoke rising from several different areas of Oleski. It is bright white, which tells us that it may be some kind of an ammunition. But we don't really know much more than that. We don't know what hit it either, and we don't know what's burning over there. But there are multiple things that are burning in the area of Oleski with thick white smoke, once again showing us that apparently the Russians in Oleski are getting absolutely slaughtered. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news here in Oleski and on out of the Kherson area as a whole, and we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. But before we do, let me check on that fundraiser. Oh my god, 4.1
We're
thousand?
only 900 away. Actually, we're only 890 away, and I did that math in my head.
Dang, oh, man, congratulations. I couldn't do that.
Thank you.
I can't even do that. And AJ threw in 150.
Hey!
We're now only 700. Wait a minute. Captain 88 Swedish put in 20. So let's see what that updates
threw
to.
a wrench into the whole equation.
Yeah, we're $720 away from the goal right now. Already. This has got to be one of the fastest fundraisers we've seen in a while, and I've got to thank you all so much. And of course, in a second, we'll probably be calling them out. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. And in our first clip, we can see the Ukrainians firing a 120mm mortar at the Russians. And so, here's the clip. we can now see the Ukrainian holding the 120mm shell with the cheese rags, and I guess you could say they're about to cheese the Russians. We now see them hanging, dropping, and dang! Those 120mm mortars don't sound like mortars, man. Those things sound like tanks. And what's crazy is that a 120mm diameter is the exact same diameter as an M1A1 or M1A2's tank cannon is.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a massive round when you really think about it, and really neat to see that they've got heavy mortars in action. We don't know where, but still really nice to see. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw Ukraine destroying a 2S3. And also, I would like to clarify this real quick. This video is from a Russian, believe it or not, and he's showing the SPG that was destroyed by Ukrainian fire. Once again, always good to get videos from the Russians just across the side of the front lines.
Oh, we're getting so close to goal.
Oh my god. Wait a minute. I think we may have actually passed it. Maybe?
Nope,
maybe
we're
not.
100 and something away.
We're only $178 away. Did I get that right? I think I got that right. 100. Maybe. I think so. Nope, it's wrong now. Some of Alex, let me put it 20. It's wrong now. Anyways, we're gonna get on into the video. We can see him wandering through. We can see shrapnel tore up the trees around this SPG. Have you ever wanted to find yourself a Husqvarna-style tree-cutting device? Well, let me tell you, partner, you haven't seen nothing until you see the M777 Artillery's M982 Excalibur shrapnel. Able to cut down trees in a 1,000 square foot radius, this thing is absolutely impressive. Not only that, but it's able to take care of your problems just across the field. Guts. Glory, America. And we can now see them wandering up to their SPG.
Он снаружи был, да? Он снаружи был?
We can see them looking at it. It doesn't appear to be doing all too well. We can see a couple of pinhole-sized, I guess you could say, shrapnel punctures on the side, and I think we did it. Oh, Boppy! We did it!
Hey,
we reached 5,000!
Jaga Jaga Igor!
We did it! We've already reached $5,000. The $5,000 goal has been reached at an impeccable timing. Absolutely incredible. Oh, let's go, boy. Let's go, buddy. We've reached $5,000. And I gotta say, absolutely amazing. This has got to be the quickest we've reached $5,000 in a long time, actually. And I gotta thank you all so much once again for helping this fundraiser to get there so quickly tonight. And I don't know, onwards to the imaginary goal. Yo, come up with one and let's reach it. And so with that, we're now going to be continuing the video. And we can see a Russian bot right there, Matthew. A simple guy. He's a little too simple. He's saying it's all fake. And I got to tell you, there's nothing faker than your performance, pal. There's nothing faker. You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. Nuke him, Matthew.
Where he at, though?
Oh, he's disappearing in the live chat now. He'll pop back up again, I promise you. But when you see their SPG, a little bit stirred and shaken.
И вот здесь вот побило.
А вот это?
Это тоже поломало, заварило ветки рядом. Вон, видишь? На башню, вот, вот он. Дыру заснял.
And this little thing, it's had a tough time. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. And I gotta say, it is nice to see that another 2S3 has been put out of action due to a little bit of shrapnel. Now, the ammo did not detonate, so it is possible that it will be repaired. It most likely will be repaired and sent back to the line, but for now, it will be out of action, most likely for several weeks, considering that from what we understand, there is a decent backlog for the few repair stations behind the lines to repair Russian vehicles, and then it'll be back on the front. But it's out of action for the large part. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see that an M113 went through a very similar situation, but it had a bit of a, what I would call a Ukrainian miracle, very similar to a Christmas miracle, but more so pertaining to the war. It went through the window, went to the dashboard, hit the engine, threw away all the hatches. And we can see that right here, and I'll show you what we're looking at. So, it came through the dashboard right there. So what he's talking about is an RPG round, and it went through the side of the M113, through the dashboard, right in front of the driver. It went whizzing by right past his face, and into the engine bay wall to his right. We can see the hole right there. Then continuing to fly through the engine bay, as we can see right there. And this little M113, although hit heavily, the round didn't go off, and so the M113 drove itself off the lines. It's a joke. Everything is burned and pierced. And we can clearly see that right there. And he said, what a day. After dodging death by literally no real logical reason, he says, what a day. It's like, man, that's a day. You might want to like take a breather for a minute. That's pretty insane. But that's crazy to see. That was very fortunate on their end, because in most normal situations, that M113 should be gone. It should have, the round should have exploded. The engine would have been destroyed. The driver certainly would have been killed. But none of that happened. The round just flew right past his face, literally right in front of it, and it didn't blow up. They're very lucky in that M113, and I gotta say, that is impressive to see that they had that kind of luck. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see some Ukrainians joking around. And I have to say, I have to show y'all this because I feel like we have to call them out. They're treating war like a joke, y'all, and this is outrageous that people treat war like a joke or have a sense of humor. It's just outrageous. Look at this. Matthew, the joke they're doing right here is that they're acting like what the Russians say they act like. So this is the joke. And we hear him playing some German song in the background, you know, like the Russians make them sound like. And then looking through the binoculars. We hear them just busting out laughing.
Bursting at the seams.
Bursting at the seams, and it's just sickening, Matthew.
Man, I thought they were about to, like, lay on the ground and play dead or something as the joke.
Nah, they were pretending to be, like, Germans, you know, like the Russians always call them Nazis. So they're sitting there looking through the binoculars and, like, holding their hand forward and, like, yelling, "Go forward, man!" You know, like in a little German accent and all that stuff while they play a German song in the background. That's the joke. But I gotta tell you, really honestly, it's absolutely sickening. I'm so sorry everyone had to witness that. People having a sense of humor in a war is completely uncalled for. These soldiers need to be found and held accountable for having a sense of humor in all of this. It's dreadful and tone deaf, really, to what these soldiers are having to go through. It's horrendous. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that. I'm actually going to be having to make an apology video the next day where I put my face in the thumbnail, and it's going to be very wide-looking and very bland. And then I'll sit down and, you know, go through the whole spiel. I'll let out the big sigh. I let y'all down, and then I'll go through the whole stupid apology. So with that, we're now moving on into the Russian casualty report, where we can see Russian losses were incredibly high today.
Oh, they got
two Bobcat skid steers, two of them, I'm telling you, and people are noticing it. They're saying they're hitting the artillery big time, and I've got to tell you, they are. They're hitting it big time. But do we have any Bobcats though? We do! HCI! KJ! Oh, look, we got a corgi!
Oh, hey, look
Yeah,
at
I like that. I like that.
Let's see. Like the total opposite of the Bobcat logo. The Bobcat logo looks menacing and the corgi looks silly.
The corgi looks silly. That is a phrase we're going to quote, Matthew. Quote it. Quote it.
Man, if this was the logo on a Bobcat, I have a feeling the tires would be like balloons and like a funny house type deal or something.
Dude, I have a feeling that the entire thing would be a balloon animal creation, man. Like, even the engine, like, it just works off of, like, dreams and pixie dust or something. But anyways, here is the casualty report. And breaking it on down, the losses were considerably high in every category except for one. We saw that 730 Russian soldiers bit the dust over the past 24 hours. That's quite a high number, and they're already well on their way beyond 200,000 Russian soldiers killed, and they're now moving on towards 205,000 Russian soldiers killed. We can also see that 16 armored personnel carriers were destroyed. That is a little bit above the war's average, believe it or not, and it is showing that the Ukrainians are able to destroy armored personnel carriers at a very high rate. On top of that, they destroyed 12 supply trucks, right on the war's average. We also saw that they destroyed 2 tanks as well, 2 main battle tanks, and that is great to see as well. Of course, a little bit below average, 3 below, but still not that bad. We also saw that 29 artillery pieces were destroyed over the past 24 hours. This number is not dropping. This appears to be a pretty steady rate at this point of destroyed artillery, and going off of that, and dividing that by 4, which means I have to whip out a calculator because that is far too advanced for my Alabama-level education, magna cum laude. And so let me get 29 divided by 4. So they lost 7 artillery batteries and an additional artillery piece just to top it all off and make the offer a little bit sweeter. Great to see, and of course very important to know that those artillery systems are being destroyed, as they are really the last saving grace of the Russian army, at least at this moment. We can also see that 21 drones were also shot down, and one of the things that I always harp on the most, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Of course, supply trucks are very important. I can't overstate how important the supply truck is to the war effort, but 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems being destroyed is not necessarily a high number in overall systems, but in the cost, it is unbelievably high. An average anti-aircraft system, even for the Russians, costs around $15 million a piece. So if you look at like a Pantsir S1 or a Tunguska or an OSA or anything like that, it's around $15 million. And it's great to see the 2 of them were destroyed, because those kinds of monetary losses for the Russians are very difficult to recuperate from. So it doesn't just become difficult from a, I guess you could say, material standpoint of where do they find another one of these vehicles. It also becomes very difficult as to where they find the funds to get another one of these vehicles, or another 2 of them, as far as today went. And so absolutely great to see, and I love to see it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report and out of the Kyiv Independence. Nice little brief today on all the losses that the Russians took. And we're now going to be moving on into the frontline news. You'll actually see that it was fairly sparse today in most areas of the line. We only got news for the large part specifically from Bakhmut. We got nothing from the southern front. We got a few things around Pisky today, and we also got 1 bit of news from the northeast. Almost all the action we saw occurring on the front lines today occurred only in Bakhmut, and it has been a wild day down there for sure. I don't know why in the world I had to go orange band on that wild day. I said it's been a wild day, but it's been a wild day, absolutely crazy. But still, we're gonna be making sure to get into that news in just a second. But Matthew, you know, we've tried for a long time, Matty, haven't we? We've tried, but we can't try.
What happened?
No, we've tried for a very long time, Matthew, to not do this particular joke, but considering that it doesn't seem to have really helped anything, we're going to go back to doing this one, because I feel like a lot of y'all enjoyed it, and it gives me a little bit of solace. And so we're going to be moving into calling out the top donors of the night and also our polls, but before we get to the polls, we have to call them out. And so let's hear them.
All right, so an update on our fundraiser. We're currently sitting at $5,751 of our $5,000 goal, and we hit that only 30 minutes into the stream. So one of the fastest times we've ever hit it, and a big thanks to all of you once again for helping us have another extremely successful fundraiser for a tremendous charity, Doctors Without Borders. And Enforcer, whenever you're ready, I have all the list of the top donors ready to go.
Call them out.
And we're going to start calling them out one by one, each individually, and shame them all.
How dare you support the Ukrainians?
Yes. Up first, we have a $1,000 donation from Trista1. That is the largest one of the night. And Trista, big thanks to you for that. That is extremely generous. And thank you so much for helping out with a very great cause. We also have a $450 from Mark, General of the LSA. He has received his promotion. He is no longer a colonel. So he has that nice bump up in the pay rate too from the government. But also, Trista put in another $100. By the way. I'm going to go ahead and call that one out. So big thanks to both of you for that. We also have a $300 from Mike G. We have a $250 from Hal Rose and Nicholas Condor. Then we have a $200 from DCC Prime 1. And then a $150 from Repo Man 46, AJ, and Mark, General of the LSA once again. And then we have a 100 from Daniel Murray, Malachite, can't remember which one it was. We also have one from Donna Olson, the Enforcer, who is apparently right here, right now. We also have one from Evanescent Wave, Eric Hutchins, Michael Stackpole, BC Skyman twice in a row. Then we have one from Activista. And then guess what? We have a 69 from Guess Who?
You know who. You know who.
Psyops. Psyops puts in a 69 like usual. Nice. Then we have a 50 from Heather Fitzgibbon. Then we have one from Greg Carrier, NBD. We also have one from Richard Bell, Blue Texas 001, Marion Deemer, Donald Linhart III. Then we have one from Silver Earth, David Prange, Silver Earth again. One from Cindy Mitchell, Rustin Rott, and finally, Brian's Thailand. And once again, big thanks to all of our top donors of the night, and big thanks to all of our other ones that we didn't call out as well, because of course, like we say all the time, even the little ones help us reach the ultimate goal. But unfortunately, what say you?
And I would say I've got to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again for helping this channel to reach the fundraiser goal. It's absolutely unbelievable to think that in the course of 42 minutes, we've almost gotten up to $6,000 raised on this fundraiser. It's absolutely unbelievable to think that this far into the war, we've been able to keep these fundraisers running and also surpass the goals every single time. And it's thanks to all of y'all. Of course, this, and unbelievably, from what we've been able to tell, Matthew, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have looked around, and it seems as though, and of course I can't back this up completely, we are only going off of the information we've seen, the Lee Spring Army runs the largest live stream fundraisers out of every other channel on YouTube. There's no other channel that runs fundraisers that get to the size ours does every single weekend. And that's thanks to all of y'all. I'd agree with that. And from what we can tell from the stats, because there's a website out there that compiles the stats, ours is the highest. I mean, there's really no other channel out there from what we can see that even gets close to the kind of size of fundraisers that this channel runs. And that's thanks entirely to the Lee Spring Army. If it was not for the Lee Spring Army, these fundraisers wouldn't be as insane as they are. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for helping these fundraisers to reach the goals that they get to and to also save lives. Because while we always focus on the goal, Matthew and me do when these fundraisers run, and then well on surpassing it, the larger thing about passing these goals is that the more support that's raised each week, the more lives that are saved directly by the Lee Spring Army itself. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all for helping that goal to be reached, and I got to thank every single one of y'all for still caring about the lives of the people that we report on over there still to this day. It's also it's also a huge thing, not to harp on it forever, but it's always crazy to me to see how well and fast we can reach these fundraiser goals. It's always crazy to me that unlike every other YouTube channel out there, at least according to what they're able to do on a live stream, the Lee Spring Army actually has a very hands-on approach to saving lives and helping out the people that we cover the news on. No other channel out there really does it like the Enforcer channel or the Lee Spring Army is able to. If
we do say so ourselves.
And we do say so ourselves, not trying to get like a commendation or anything here, but no other channel is able to help out that much, or as much as the Lee Spring Army has been able to. And I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for helping this to be possible, helping to save lives, and helping us to have a true impact on the way the war that we are covering each and every day on this channel is unfolding. The Lee Spring Army is the greatest. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army never dies. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the polls. And with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, I have to ask, because I saw a couple of people mentioning it, we are super close to our $1 million fundraising goal. I'm not exactly sure how close we are just yet. I know we're somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40,000 away, so we are getting extremely close. I'll give it another month, and we'll be there.
And I would honestly say, yeah, give it another 3 weeks. We might be there. We are thinking about doing something really big for the night we know we will pass $1 million raised. But, you know, I'd have to figure out how to fit that into the schedule because, interestingly enough, now that we're making short war summaries in the middle of the day, and those are supposed to happen 7 days a week nonstop, it kind of boots out the only other time window we have to be able to do the live podcast. So we have to make a decision. Really, honestly, that would be worth making a poll about. Would y'all rather have 7 days a week uninterrupted short war summaries, or would y'all rather have about 6 short war summaries throughout the week, and then maybe one live podcast, because we might be able to do that instead. It probably won't be on a regular schedule, though, the live podcast. It may, like, show up on a Friday, or a Monday, or a Wednesday, or a weekend. I don't really know how we would work that out, but I would like to see what y'all think about if y'all would rather want 7 days of short war summaries, or a live podcast where we kind of just get on air and we talk about whatever. It's long, of course, not talking about politics, but really anything that anyone wanted to talk about. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And I got to say, we are very close to $1 million raised. I got to say, love to see it. Love to see it. And so with that, we are on to the polls.
All right. And our first poll says, Prigozhin claims that Wagner will leave Bakhmut in the coming days after they declare an alleged victory. And what are your thoughts? 50% said they will leave and they want to. 7% said unsure. 12% said I'm mixed on it. And 31% said they won't leave and it's lies. And I have to say, with Prigozhin's history of lying like he does, he lies just about as worse as I've ever seen. It's really hard to tell if they're actually leaving. I do know that it seems like they want to leave, but at the same time, he's a master of misinformation, and I'm going to remain unsure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say probably is leaving. We know that they did want to leave beforehand. They haven't been lying about wanting to leave. We know that for certain because they did get a letter, and we do know that that letter does exist where they threatened to have them all charged with treason if the Wagner left its position. And I think that now that they claimed to have taken Bakhmut, although I will say, I'm going to show y'all some videos that did come out today. We were able to find out that all of these videos came out today, and there was around 3 of them, and they still show Ukrainians in the city. Either the Ukrainians are actually pushing back a little bit into the city today, or they have still held those positions and deep state's inaccurate, one or the other. But it does appear that the Wagner will be moving out. They say that they're going to be leaving and going back to Syria and Africa, mostly because the forces that they go up against in Syria and Africa are not as, I guess you could say, well-trained or well-equipped as Ukrainian forces have become. And so you can see that the Wagner is only effective and only feared when it goes up against far worse-off adversaries, like, for example, the Syrian Democratic Forces, which we support in Syria. They're not a bad group. It's just that the war in Syria has been dragging on for so long, and they've really, both sides have depleted their resources so badly that even a Russian mercenary group can kind of hop into the war and they look like gods on earth compared to everyone else. And then, of course, they're involved in what's going on in Sudan right now. And that hasn't actually died. That's been going on in the background ever since we covered it that one night. And it's not going well for anyone at the moment. It's just a slugfest down there. But they're leaving for there. It's going to be easier for them to conduct. And it also allows them to conserve their resources and manpower. So that way, if anything does happen in Russia, they just come right back and they get involved in it in full strength, at least as far as their size will be leaving Bakhmut. And so with that, hope that does address that poll fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And our second poll says, Zelensky repeated his denial of Russia's victory in Bakhmut. And what do you make of this? 68% said Ukraine is making a comeback and wait and see. 16% said unsure, 12% said it seems a little iffy to me, and 6% said they are not making a comeback. And I know some folks tend to lean toward the side that Ukraine has lost Bakhmut, but hear me out. Today, some general in the Ukrainian army said that they are going to try to re-encircle Bakhmut from the flanks, and I wouldn't totally rule out the fact that they might be able to get that done, and this could turn around really quickly, especially with Wagner potentially leaving Bakhmut and the Russian MOD troops left to defend it. This could turn around. So I say wait and see, and I'm holding out hope. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm holding out hope for sure as well. One thing that we have heard is that one Ukrainian general says they hold hardly any of Bakhmut. The other one says they're sweeping around the flanks and they're going to encircle the city. People have been saying that those two quotes are contradictory, but they really aren't. It's almost two different comments on two different areas. Yes, the Ukrainians have largely lost the city of Bakhmut. However, the flanks are a whole different story, and they are currently still speeding around both sides from what we can tell, and they're going to be getting behind Bakhmut maybe within the next few weeks at the longest. So Also, one second. Let me take care of that one, Matthew. I've got that one. But I would say that they are certainly going to be sweeping around the flanks. You have to remember that the city does not matter, at least at this point in the battle, and even at the beginning part of the battle for the Wagner. Remember, everyone, I gotta remind some people, because I have to be honest. Some people sit there and they just start to generalize stuff, and it's like they have no common sense. The Wagner didn't just push right into Bakhmut and win it. If you remember, they actually fought around the flanks first, up into Soledar and into Klishkivka, and once they started moving towards the highway perimeter and towards Orikovo-Vasilivka, then they started to push the center, if everyone remembers. And so the battle is always going to be won around the flanks. It's all, well, at least the stepping stones to win the battle will be won around the flanks. The statement that some people have been making that they've lost the city, so the battle's pointless now and it can't be won, is very silly to me, because that's like saying at the Battle of Waterloo, when the French took Hougoumont, that they had won the battle. Oh, look, they took Hougoumont. It's in the center of the battlefield. They've won. No, they didn't. They didn't win. They got blasted later on the day after von Steuben's men arrived from the north. And so it's like, that's absolutely stupid to say, because you don't have to hold the center. You don't have to hold, like, I guess you could say, the objective in the middle of the battlefield to be able to win the battle. You can just sweep around behind them and then win it, because they have to leave that center area of the field. And so with that, hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for now. So real quick, just a reminder, we have no super chats tonight because we're focused on our fundraiser. But if you have a question for us, put @EnforcerMatt in the chat, and then your question behind it, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. Right now we have about 13, so I do need some more. But our first question from the live chat is going to go to Robert McDevitt, who says, what Western equipment will see video evidence? Is it the Challenger, Leopard, or Bradley in battle first?
It's most likely going to be the Leopard in battle first. The Leopard is one of the easier to maintain from what we understand, and also the Ukrainians have had the most hands-on experience with the Leopards as compared to the Challengers or the Abrams. The Abrams is probably going to be the last one on the field, from what we can tell right now. Kind of like everything we send at this point, it's going to most likely be the last on the field, although it's supposed to be the largest in numbers. Well, actually, the Leopard beats the tank out. Well, the Leopard beats the Abrams out, but we're probably going to be seeing that as the order that the tanks enter. It'll be the Leopard first, Challenger second, Abrams third. The Abrams is going to take literally forever, because we're even saying right now, oh, it's going to be a few months. It's like, man, I don't know why. But anyways, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I also have to say this, because this is something really interesting to talk about, and I'm trying to see if I can find it in the live chat, although it feels like the live chat's going a million miles an hour, and I saw it and I wanted to make sure to address it earlier. Also, sorry, Lumps, GTL, it is Blucher. I'm sorry, it's not Steuben. Steuben was actually the guy who helped the U.S. Army in the Revolutionary War, or the Continental Army. Let's see. Oh yeah, someone said, win a battle, lose a war. The reason why the Ukrainians are sweeping around, because, of course, I have to say this again, Bakhmut has no strategic value as a city. The value that Bakhmut has is to inflict losses on the Russian army. And it appears that with what the Ukrainians are doing, encircling the city, is that they are attempting to beat the large amount of the Russian army outright at this point. And if they were able to do that, they will be dealing a decisive blow to the Russians that they'll never be able to recover from. And some people are going to go, hey, wait a minute, why does that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? Why in the world would you destroy the Russian army when you could just fight elsewhere? And really, that's a good question, honestly. I'm not mocking anyone who asked that question. It's a great question. The thing is, however, is that there's always a toolbox of, I guess you could say, different tactics, different strategies that you can use to try and win a war. And at some points, like with a battle that the Russians have put everything they have into, it may be important to just decisively defeat them. And especially if you can capture a large amount of prisoners or destroy a large amount of their army, that could really turn around a war. Everyone has to remember that the Battle of Stalingrad was the turning point in the Eastern Front of the Second World War. Once the entire, and I believe it was the 6th, and let me make sure, I want to make sure on this one, the 6th Army at Stalingrad. Yes, it was. The 6th Army, when it was surrounded at Stalingrad and then surrendered, that was a major turning point of the war. It's especially against Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, because 2 million German soldiers had been captured or had been outright killed before that by the poor weather and also by Russian forces. And so, due to that massive manpower loss and that massive hole that formed in the front lines in that area, it threw off the Germans from 1942 onwards, where they were kind of evenly matched at that point against the Soviets, to where they were on the back foot against the Russians and constantly being pushed back from that point. And so, it is always important to remember that while sometimes it is best to give up a town that has no strategic value, sometimes when everyone starts putting all chips on the table, you might want to just go out there and decisively defeat them, because that may even produce far better results going into the future than just letting them have the city and moving on elsewhere, with their army remaining largely intact after the battle, or at least the parts that remain. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, before we move on to our next question, shout out to Steve Watkins at work, who put in a 50 to Docs Without Borders, and thank you very much, Steve, for that very generous donation. And also, shout out to Silver Earth. It's their birthday at midnight, so happy early birthday to you, and I'm sure we'll still be around when midnight hits, so I hope you enjoy your birthday. And Enforcer, what say you?
And happy birthday to you, Silver Earth. I gotta say, that Earth do be silver. And I gotta tell you, man, he does not have that Mal drip. Mal had no silver drip. This man, he be a whole Earth that's silver. And a happy birthday to you. I hope you have a good one. We actually, usually fundraiser streams are a little bit shorter than normal streams. They usually only last 2.5 hours. But we may be around by 12. Who knows? We'll just have to see. But still, happy early birthday to you. If we're still around, we'll make sure to wish you another happy birthday when it actually comes around. And if not, we wish you an early happy birthday. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And I hope everyone gives a happy birthday to the man of the hour, Silver Earth, here in the live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, have you seen the Mark Wahlberg memes of him saying all that designer got me drip drip?
No. No.
Okay, so you haven't been getting the reference the entire time I've been doing that, then.
No, I haven't. I just know that one Burger King song. You know, can I get a Whopper with 2 drinks? You know, and then he sits there and says something about drip drip. That's the only one I know, because that's like the drip song, if you know what I mean. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, let's go over the Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, it was Mark Hodges, Cife, JP's Gone Fishing, Cliff Simonson, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. And they said the Morse code tonight says, Ukraine keeps moving around the flames, glory to Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And that is largely correct. It's not flames, but it is flanks. And so that is one of the few typos. I'm sure it was just most likely a typo. But y'all got it correct. Ukraine will keep moving around the flanks of Bakhmut and will most likely win the battle from that. And so, once again, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, thank you all once again for deciphering that Morse code message on the 452nd day of the war. Honestly, something funny, a little weird thing that I've had ever since this time frame passed is that ever since the day 250s have passed us, every single night I'm having to remind myself that it is no longer the day 250s. It is now like day 450 something. And I feel like it's going to get even wilder to remember that once we get into the day 500s, because that is crazy to think that we've been doing this for 452 days already, and 500 days is not that far ahead of us at this point. In fact, it's almost 100 days since we ran the 1-year anniversary live stream podcast. And that's crazy to think that was like 3 months ago, 100 days ago nearly.
That is crazy. That was actually seems like yesterday.
Yeah, it does. It seems like yesterday. Everything like that's blended in for me ever since like past August of last year. Everything feels like it was yesterday. Like the Moskva feels like it was just sank yesterday, and that was over a year ago at this point, well over a year. But with that, I hope that kind of gives you all an interesting insight into a challenge that I have every single night to try and remember. And with that, we are on into, y'all know it. I think this is actually the final one of this segment, if I'm correct.
It is. And also, for everyone asking about the drone that we are sending to Ukraine, we're currently working on sorting out customs and export issues. We're trying to make sure all the paperwork and everything is good to go before we send it. We don't want to get confiscated by customs, because it turns out there might actually be something there that we did not know before. So, Enforcer, if you'd like to update them on that as well.
Yeah, and also to add a little bit of extra detail, it got a little difficult after we filmed our part of the video to make sure that we could send it to them, and we tried to come up with a whole bunch of ideas not to get into them, just in case if it is a security issue for them with how exactly it is working out. But we have to send it to a third-party, I guess you could say, distributor in Poland that is associated with their company, well, their battalion, the 231st, and then from there, that company will take it from Poland across the border into Ukraine and pretty much straight to that battalion. So it is. It has been a little bit of a lengthy process to have this all figured out. There was actually a whole bunch of different ideas that me and the fellow who's from the 231st were trying to work out with how to get the drone there. So we should be able to have it sent off in the mail probably within the next 3 days, I'm hoping, and then it'll probably be over there to the 231st in a couple of weeks. Y'all may also be surprised by this as well. Sending things from Ukraine and sending things to Ukraine takes an unbelievably long amount of time. It took them, I believe, a month and a half. It actually took them, no, I'm remembering this now. It took them 2 months for the flag to make it from them to us. Because when that process originally started, we had to iron out the details of how to get it here, where we were, and all that stuff. And then when they finally mailed it, it took forever for it to get out of Ukraine and then into the Western world, and then it took forever from there for it to get here. And so it is a ungodly long process. It's honestly unbelievably long to get anything out of Ukraine or get anything into Ukraine. So it is a pretty long process, sadly. But with that, and also someone said, send it to Starsky. I'm sure Starsky is incredibly busy. Another thing that is like a behind the scenes thing is that we have a lot of offers from folks to do all kinds of stuff. And if we picked up everyone on every offer, we would never be able to run the stream again. We wouldn't be able to really get to half of the offers that we have because it would take up so much time to just do half of them. So I'm sure that Starsky's hands are pretty full. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Jason said lost in the mail. That would be my worst nightmare if it got lost. I would be infuriated because that was not cheap. That was like I'm trying to think about how much that was. It was like a $3,000 drone, I think, if I remember the number correctly. That was not a cheap drone, and if it got lost in the mail, I would personally be going over to where it was last seen, and I would be interrogating the postal workers to figure out where that thing went. But with that, we are on to, well, actually, I think we're on out of this question segment, if I'm correct, Matthew.
And yes, we are.
All right, so with that, we're moving on out of the question segment and on into the Northeast. Nothing happened here except for one video where we saw the Ukrainians using a ZSU gun mounted onto the back of a truck against some drones. Or more so, Russians on the ground with the assistance of drones. We can hear the heavy metal coming in strong, and we can now see the Ukrainians taking the net off of the ZSU gun. And we can see it right there. Just your simple gun. Many people may remember this from places like Syria or really anywhere there's been a war that, you know, some questionable groups have been involved in. This is where it comes from, is former Soviet countries like these. And we can see them now firing it off of the back of their truck, and we can now see it landing right near the trench. We now see them firing off another burst, and the spent shell casings flying just about everywhere. We can see them continuing to fire, and I don't really know what kind of truck that is either. It's a very interesting looking one. We now see that they've got their drone back, and we now see the Ukrainian commander. His call sign popped up like he was entering the WWE or something like that. That was actually a really cool transition. Let's look at that again. Comes flying onto the screen. I like that. Very nice. And we can see him talking about their ZSU work. And you see him continuing to talk about it. And I gotta say, this guy, he likes talking about it.
He does. I wonder what he's saying.
I wonder. The rock music's still playing, so sadly we won't ever know. But we can see another guy, Oleg, he's talking about it as well. And they like it. We can get the large picture that these guys do like their gun.
That guy had the same ear pros I've got.
And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from this little clip. Once again, really nice to see them using their little ZSU gun up there in the Northeast. And we're now going to be moving on into Bakhmut. Now, to go to Deep State UA, here's the past 24 hours according to Deep State UA. So let me show y'all. Wait, hang on, let me go back a little bit more. And right there. So they show that the Wagner unit, or the Russians by and large, have moved forward and taken the even where the dirt bike rally course is, the buildings around there. And so, according to Deep State UA, Ukraine controls absolutely nothing of Bakhmut anymore. The entire thing is controlled by the Russians. However, I have to say this, and at this point, I gotta be completely honest with y'all and frank. For a long time in this war, for nearly 300 days, we use no other map but the one we have right here on screen that I make every single night. We didn't use any other ones because I didn't trust them with their accuracy, and nowadays, I gotta be totally honest, this isn't appearing to be that accurate. Because we got videos today showing that they are in the city, and they're well within it, because when they turn around, there are several city blocks that are visible behind them, and that couldn't be the case, because if this is all that Ukraine possibly is fighting in right now, it's just these 2 city blocks, there's no way in hell there's multiple city blocks behind them and in front of them in every single direction. There's no way. And so, I don't believe this map at this point. I don't think it's accurate, and on top of that, we have gotten reports from even Prigozhin. And if you say Deep State doesn't represent that, so what? Kick rocks. It's Deep State. It's not Prigozhin. Prigozhin said that Klishkivka was lost nearly 4 days ago. We've never seen Deep State update for that. And why in the hell would the Russians be saying that the situation is far worse than it would be? We've even seen pro-Russian maps showing that Klishkivka is lost and it's been put into Ukrainian hands. I don't think that this map anymore is accurate. And we honestly might be moving away from using the Deep State map again for that reason, and moving right back into just using our map alone. It was like that for 300 days nearly, and due to a whole bunch of people complaining that our map was inaccurate, we started to bring in Deep State's map and use it. But now it's not really up to the kind of fidelity and speed that we used to have our map up to with the amount of detail, and I'm not really happy with it all too much anymore. So with that, we're now going to be moving on into the city, because we've gotten 3 video clips from inside the city that were dated to today. Starting off with our first one, showing that the Ukrainians are defending trenches in, I guess you could say, right outside of the city, from what we can tell. And so here's the clip. So this is in a tree line, and we're assuming it's near the Chromove area. Oh, you see him shouting at the Russians. We now see him getting ready to fire a grenade. He fires his rifle grenade. And it sounds like an Xbox Live voice chat. We can see him firing another grenade.
Ёжик, блядь, будешь подавать далеко. Будешь на подаче, братан. АПшку давай.
We now see him firing off what appeared to be an AT-4.
Пайся, блядь, прочухай подсадку. Давай воги.
We now see him talking to a guy down inside of a bunker. It appears they gave him more rifle grenades.
Богдан, це буде бенчик. Давай пулемет. Спай Кракена сюда. Жош, куда ты коры?
You now see him getting a PKP machine gun ready.
Потому что папа сейчас будет работать нахуй.
He's now grabbing the machine gun. He's setting it up. And he's about to light him up. You can see that they don't have a firing step, so they're having to hold the rifles over the top of the trench and fire them. An inaccurate way to fire, but better than sticking their head up, most likely.
He's doing a good job to me.
And he's into it.
Pretty strong to fire that gun one-handed like that, basically.
Yeah, I gotta say. We now see him firing more rifle grenades off casually.
Ближе к брусверу! К этому брусверу, да! Иди сюда! По кайфу!
We now see him firing off even more rifle grenades.
Бережем, пацаны!
Firing off an AK, just spraying it into the distance, getting some more mags.
тоже, блядь.
And continuing to spray the Russians in the distance.
Иди сюда, тварь, блядь! Ответку дают, пули хуярят на всю. Багдад, отдайте педики.
I just like how the guy's inside of the bunker and he's just reloading all the mags for everyone. he's like that guy that everybody wants at the range, Matthew. The guy who will reload the mags for you so you don't really have to worry about it yourself. He's that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, he's in there doing.
Аккуратно, там же ж наши пацаны, ёпта, бля. Ов, горобчик, блядь, дальний! Ты шо, нахуй? Сюда підійшов! Не сильно не свети голову,
It sounds like the firefights
Блядь, тобі
subsided
нахуй
now,
сам
and they've
отіб'ю,
defended their
блядь.
positions well. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, and great to see the angry Ukrainian soldier continuing to defend his frontline trench. With that, we're going to be moving on into a clip from inside the city, where we can see that once again, the Ukrainians are shown to be in the city today. So here's the clip. And I would like to remind everyone that this video was actually made not, because I saw some people saying, how do you know the videos weren't made days ago? This video is much like a clip where the Russians say Madyar died, and then he came back outside like 2 days later and then showed he was still alive. This video was actually made in response to the Russian claim, or Prigozhin's claim, that Bakhmut had been captured in its entirety, and these Ukrainian soldiers took this video to clearly show they are still in the city. And so we can see them moving around here. We can see that there's multiple apartment blocks in this direction. There were multiple apartment blocks over to the right side of the screen right now. And there are multiple apartment blocks to the behind area of the screen right now. They are in the middle of the city. I mean, they're not in the dead center of the city, but they're still holding at least a sizable area of the outskirts of the town. This video proves that, and it was taken today. Once again, look, they turn it around, and you can see another block of apartment blocks over there, and it appears that they're moving into the city, and then behind them there's multiple blocks back there. And so clearly, they don't hold half the city, they don't hold all of it, but they still hold a sizable amount of it to the west. And there you go, you can even see multiple city blocks in that direction as well. If this is in the middle of a decent defensive position, I don't know what is. And, there's a lot of people out here going, oh, well, Prigozhin said, well, yeah, but he's a liar. And he's probably just trying to get the Wagner out of there, even if he knows they haven't taken the entirety of Bakhmut. And so, hell, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it at all that they are still in there. And that video was taken today. And if that doesn't prove anything, I don't know what does. If that doesn't prove anything, hell, I would be really surprised at this point. Really, I don't even have words for it anymore, because this channel always works off of video and picture evidence. And if there is video and picture evidence to contradict what clowns out there are saying, then I'm going to go with video and picture evidence. Our eyes don't deceive us. Pictures don't deceive us either. And if a video came out of the city today showing that they look to be, and let me go on Google Maps and I'll show you where, like an area that could be plausible. It looks like they're at least this far into the city, like right here. If they are still there, there's no way in hell that the Russians have taken the whole city. There are multiple blocks behind them that the Russians would have to take. So, that's what it shows in video. And then there's going to be people, I know it because we had it last night, people in the live chat saying, oh, well, but Prigozhin said, oh, so now we believe the Russians. When we want to just believe the Russians on, like, circumstantial basis. Like, we won't believe them when they say that they destroyed a Leopard tank because they're not even there. But for some reason, we'll now believe them when they say they've taken all of Bakhmut. But there's still videos coming out for 2 straight days now showing Ukrainian forces are still in there. And that one was dated from today. It was put out on Telegram today from the 8th Brigade saying they're still in the city. And here's a video clip of us in the city today. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip, which shows the ghost unit inside of Bakhmut city as well. And once again, you see multiple city blocks. They're panning around. We can't see how many city blocks are in that direction. They turn around, and then there's at least 2 blocks behind them. There's even dogs here. And there's no active fighting going on right here either. We can look over there, multiple other city blocks. once again, they're in the middle of the city. And so you can see right there that they're still in the city. There's 2 video clips showing from today. They're still in the city. And so, with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, because from what we can tell, there is at least still a sizable area that's being held by Ukrainian forces right now. There is 2 video clips coming out about it. And so I don't know what else to do. We saw video clips yesterday, we saw video clips today, we work off of video and picture evidence. So it is what it is. I'm not going to sit there and go, although the video evidence shows they're in the city, I'm going to say they're not in the city. In hell, I mean, and also I saw someone ask, oh, well, why in the world are we going to believe Prigozhin when he says they've lost Klishchiivka, but not believe him when he says they've taken all of Bakhmut? Because saying that they've lost Klishchiivka is to their detriment, and so it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for them to say something like that. It's more to their positive effect to say they've taken the city of Bakhmut, although they haven't. Because you've got to remember, the Russians don't lie just in every direction. They lie when it benefits them. They don't lie when it doesn't benefit them. They usually are sitting there and even still lying about how bad things are when it's not benefiting them. Like when, for example, he said they're in Klishchiivka, that gives us a good idea that the Ukrainians have moved a little bit beyond Klishchiivka, most likely, because otherwise you would be saying they're outside of Klishchiivka and they haven't really taken it yet, or something similar. And so that's why we're saying that it's not true, and on top of that, there's video footage that visibly shows them still there. We run off of video and picture evidence.
And also, Mark, General of the LSA, said something earlier that was a good point. Prigozhin is naturally a liar, but in this instance, he has a advantage to lie because he wants to get his people out of Bakhmut, and Russia's already threatened him. If you don't fulfill your contractual agreement, then we're going to come and shoot you, basically for treason. So he would be benefited by rushing forward to take pictures, acting like they've taken stuff, and then say, we've done our duty, and now we're leaving because we want to get out of here.
And also, I see someone saying that he said around Klishchiivka. I believe Matthew was here with me that night. I don't know. You know, sometimes he just takes holidays. But I believe, if I remember correctly, he said the Ukrainians had taken Klishchiivka and the 72nd had given up the village.
I honestly cannot remember.
I will have to go back eventually and look at that clip, because I remember him saying, we fought for every meter around Klishchiivka and the 72nd just gave it up, which means that the Ukrainians took the town. And also, once again, to reiterate that, yes, we don't believe Prigozhin when he says he took Bakhmut. I would believe him, though, when they say the Ukrainians have taken Klishchiivka, because Russians lie throughout the entire war for propaganda reasons. There's no positive propaganda to come out of saying that you've just lost a village and flanks around the town are collapsing. How in the world does that bolster war support? That does not bolster war support. So why in the world would they lie about something that would only harm them to lie about? They would be telling a positive lie. They would be saying, oh, not only are we holding Klishchiivka, but we made it all the way to Konstantinivka already. Because that's the way they lie. We know that he wasn't lying in that situation, because that doesn't benefit them. And then on top of that, we've gotten video evidence showing that they've made it well around Klishchiivka, and they're currently fighting with a Russian defensive line somewhere, what appears to be around the railroad tracks, out to the east of Klishchiivka. So, you know, we have plenty of video evidence to back that up as well. And speaking of video evidence in that part of the line, we're going to be moving on into the southern front, where we saw that the 3rd Brigade was still fighting the Russians in that area today. We hear a firefight going on as the 3rd Brigade tries to find exactly where the fire is coming from down the tree line. And it appears they're pointing out in that direction over there. We now see the firefight carrying on as they continue to move their way on down the tree line and towards the Russian forces, closing the distance and making it far easier to get a hit, also putting themselves in a decent bit more danger. We now see the Ukrainian hitting the deck as rifle fire whistles right over his head, and we now see him setting up to fire back his rifle. We now see the videos cut, and they're on the move again, further down the tree line.
Я достал пулю отсюда.
And it appears that the soldier may have just been hit. You now see him laying low. Can't really tell if he has been hit or not. We now see them moving a little bit further back down the tree line. And it appears that they're falling back and repositioning. We hear rifle fire still continuing. You see them still firing at the Russians. We see them continuing to fire at the Russians. We see him picking up the, what appears to really be an AR, actually. I don't know if that's a M4 or anything like that. It just kind of looks like a really nice, stylized AR. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but once again showing the 3rd Brigade in action down in the southern area around Klishkivka. We're going to be moving on into our next clip, where we saw that a Russian soldier got hit in this area as well. So we're going to be muting the baby music. I don't know why the hell they're
horror music.
You now see the artillery hitting the Russian squad, and we can only see we see now that there's only 2 of them left. Artillery shell landed in front of them, and we don't know how many are left beyond that. I don't even know what the hell that was, but it just came like a lightning bolt out of the sky and hit right on their squad, and it appears that they're now turning around and reversing course back to the tree line they came from. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into our next one a little bit further south, where we also saw that the 3rd Brigade was able to capture even more Russian prisoners of war. They were able to capture one of the 3 Stooges.
Та він звідти прийшов.
Если убегу от них.
А ти з тюрми, да? А ти в Вагнері? Звідки?
Is that the prisoner in the middle?
Yes. I call him
He's
Mo.
kind of sprawled out, isn't he?
He's about to go, "Hey, Crowley, check out this pineapple I got." Oh, yeah? Boing, and then poke him in the eye.
Ти втикай по касках втикай.
2 тижні, да, 2 неділі.
The Ukrainians aren't sure to treat him like a celebrity or a criminal.
They're going, "You know, I watched the brand new 3 Stooges movie. I didn't know we'd have a celebrity amongst us sometime around." And he's like,
Убіжать. Можливо, тебе поміняють. А потім...
Duncan VR said, "Is he going bald?" Nah, that doesn't look like bald and bankrupt to me. He's like in Colombia right now or something.
А як ти втечеш? Як ти убіжиш? Ну, тебя снова призовут.
Man, this guy's laying out like he's a Roman emperor about to be fed grapes.
Ляж, тебя заберут и все там под дроном.
Азовцы.
Ну, пришлют сюда и так и сделают.
Что тебе про Азов говорили? Слышал про Азов?
He's telling them, you remember that part where you got poked in the eye? We're about to do it again.
Показывают по телевизору.
Kevin Key said, "Freaking a Wizard of Oz hairdo."
Нацист?
Not gonna lie, it kind of is. He looks like if he's from the Lollipop Guild or something like that.
Так говорили. Больше телек слушай.
Jesse said, "A real Soviet haircut," and I would agree. It's a bad haircut, man.
Кино смотришь, пропаганда.
Видел своих, да? Он уже все лежат.
Ну не все убежали, блядь, половина.
Кто-то убегал и...
Ну то там лежать, там лежать.
О, первый медбат идет.
Можеш передати привіт полускунам?
Somebody said that's Roman. Where's Roman?
Передаю привіт полускунам.
Roman?
The Ukrainian soldier.
No way in hell.
Иди, привет.
No way. It is. It's Roman. It actually is Roman. I was going to sit there and look at that for a minute, but he is nonetheless Roman. Also, Matthew, I'd like to say, keep that haircut in mind right here, that like curl piece of hair right there in the center of his head. I found what we were talking about, at least in the live chat. I found the members of the Lollipop Guild, and I have to say the similarity is striking.
The hell is this from?
This is from The Wizard of Oz.
Damn, that's some freaky mess right here.
I mean, I gotta tell you, man, this is some freaky stuff, and it looks like the Russians are getting close to getting as freaky as this. I gotta tell you that's pretty rough right there, and I feel sorry for the folks who had to be a part of this movie and dress up like that for that like 5-minute scene. That must have been tough, I'm telling you. But we found a member of the Lollipop Guild, and it appears that they've been captured by the Ukrainian forces. And when asked if he had done anything sinister while in the war, he went, "I would never do that." And so we're going to be moving on from that clip. And behind the lines,
that Shark Jabberjaw used to talk like that too, you know.
Yeah, I think that Shark Jabberjaw actually had the same voice actor or something. I don't really know. But anyways, we're going to be moving a little bit further behind the lines where we saw the 93rd Brigade, the fighting 93rd, was able to shoot down a drone with and let me make sure I get this correct. Let me see, the Strela. Damn, son. And we can see it shoot it down right there.
Strela,
блядь! And we can now see the Orlan right here. And we hear the servo still working.
Та я бачив, збили йому крило, то він впав. Надбили крило.
Я не знаю, де акумулятор.
We now see the Strela right over there. Maybe lining up to fire again. Cool. Dang.
that was kind of sketchy.
That was sketchy. And we see they got another one right there. It's falling down from the sky. And it's coming on down. Look at it go. Dang, bro, just hitting us with the sick beats. Real trap shit.
Trapaholics.
We make you look easy. Walk with your
boys.
we both get to the same one at the same time. But with that, that's the other clip. And great to see they were able to take down 2 Orlan 10s with a Strela in the area of Bakhmut, or more so Klishchiivka. With that, we're going to be moving on behind the lines near to Ivanivsky, where we heard that a Ukrainian general said that encirclement was underway. According to the general, they are currently sweeping around the flanks and will most likely tactically encircle the city here relatively soon. So great to hear from that general, and of course, wonderful to see. We're now going to be moving on up towards the northern flank and near Bodanivka, where we saw a grad firing in the Bakhmut area. This kind of artillery support is vital for Ukrainian forces. And we can see this little fella right here just firing away its rockets. And we can also see that apparently it's activating the bees in the area as well. A brand new kind of micro-drone that the evil Western imperialists have made to further smite the Russians just because we have had a historical hatred for them or something like that. At least that's what the Russian news told me. We're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news and on up into the area of Dubova-Vasilievka, where we saw that some French volunteers took a look at their trench after a strike.
Ouais, mais là, ça va prendre peu. Ouais, mais là, ça va prendre peu. On n'a pas d'autre shot?
We can hear that song playing, that movie recap plays, in the background whenever they're talking about one of those movies, Matthew. In this movie, an entire town was abandoned. There was nobody around, and the character got up. He brushed his teeth and then walked outside. It's the exact same music.
You sound like the guy off Dark Docs or something, like Dark Facts.
I think it's like Dark Seas or something like that. The Shinano aircraft carrier. And we can see them taking a look at the trench. We can see that it's been damaged, but everyone's all right, and that's the important thing. The Ukrainian trench has been heavily damaged. However, the French volunteers continue to fight on. And
man, between that voice and the creepy music they'll play on that channel, it'll have me on edge. If somebody came up and tapped me on the shoulder, I would jump out of my skin.
Chapter 2. Chapter 2, the push.
Have me sitting there biting my nails with that voice.
Man. Number 15.
Oh, that one makes me want to go and jump off of some high place or something.
Oh, man, don't be so critical. That's that man's actual voice. But anyways, we can see...
No, it's not. He's putting on an act.
No, man, it isn't. I
He's
promise.
gotta be
you.
putting on
Nah,
an act.
it's not. It can't be. But we can see them here once again, looking at the trench, making sure it's all right. And Terrence Custer said that he loved dark dunks. Oh man, but anyways, so that's the end of the clip, and we can see that while the trench was damaged, the volunteers were a-okay, and that's the most important thing. But with that, we're going to be moving on a little bit further up the line and to where the trench fighting continues. We now hear them firing off the machine gun. A pretty slow rate of fire. Oh, we got it. We got a hardcore gangster here, man. This man is shooting it sideways.
Sideways.
Давай, просто забывай. Террасы, блядь. Я крию, Эдю! Туди їбаш, отуди їбаш. Лівіше, трохи лівіше я бачив його. Де дерево, там десь я його бачив. На. Їбаш, я бачив.
You can see them continuing to lay down fire at the Russians. We got, once again, our fella down there reloading the mags. We can now see them conversating about their next plan. Chapter 2, the fire battle. We can see them switching through the mags, trying to check for a loaded one, and it appears that they don't have any.
Man, this man's from the trenches, literally.
A real trench fighter is about as good as they come. See them moving past the trench, past each other. Oh, and he whipping out the RPG.
Man, it must feel good to be a gangster.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. But anyways, you see him firing off the RPG.
Немного контузило. У нас еще один выстрел есть.
We now see them continuing to fire their machine guns at the Russians. We haven't seen the guy fire the RPG yet. It is loaded, however.
Хай наводится, бы нас сейчас замахнуть всех нахуй. Пидорасы, блядь, ёбаные.
And so with that, that's the end of the clip. But once again, the trench fighting in this area continues as the Ukrainians try and advance. We're now going to be moving on into the area just west of Bladadny, where we saw some Russian trenches hit by Ukrainian drones. This was done by the 30th Mechanized Brigade. The Home Depot. You need lumber? We've got the most messed up lumber in the city. Oh, wait a minute, hang on, Matthew. Hey! Wait a minute, hang on, Matthew. Let me think about it. How would that usually go? The Russians have been
talking about.
I'm trying to think of it. 1 second. The Russians have invaded your land. Hey, build the drone. Fly over their trench. That's the music they were playing a Lego at. Anyways, we can see the Russians trying to fire at the drone, and it appears to be proving unfruitful. We can see the drone watching them as they fire off their dollar store AKs, and we can now see the artillery wiping out their dollar store trench. We can now see the bomblets falling straight through the netting or rolling into open holes. It appears that the netting didn't really provide any protection. And I gotta say, Matthew, that was really smart of the Russians. They covered their entire trench with a tarp that they can't escape from. We can see one of them trying to poke his way out right here. But the bomblets just fall right through. Oh, my Lord. Oh my God. That was
Big dummies.
That was so stupid to do. That was just goofy, and it looks like they paid the price for the goofiness of that idea. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip where we saw Russian forces hit at the farther northern fringe of the front line today. They were hit under a bridge, and this is where the Russians' natural habitat is, right under the bridge. We can now see the Ukrainians moving up. These may be Ukrainians, I believe. We see them nading bunkers. Oh, no. Dude, I always get a laugh out of how casually they do this stuff, man. Because it's like he's just like, it's like he's chucking a potato into a sack or something right here. Just look at this. It's so casual. It's like they're not even really throwing a grenade in there. That's what makes me laugh about this stuff. And I think they cleared that one out for sure. We now see them
It's a little slow to get away from it, too.
Yeah, we can see them doing the same treatment to the bridge. Dropping grenades through the holes up the top of the bridge. Hey, Tim, you made sure to hole up the bridge, right? I don't know. And it appears that a Russian... What? They're in the middle of a firefight, and this Russian goes, wait, my face is dirty. 1 second. Whoosh. Okay, my face is clean now. And then the grab barrage comes in or something right after that. We can now see them still hanging out under the bridge, trying to hide from the Ukrainians. Oh, yeah, that didn't do too well for him. We can now see them hitting it with the RPG, and it looks like the Ukrainians are rolling up a tank. And it looks like the tank is firing point blank at the bridge. Oh, no. I don't think this defensive position will hold. Oh, yeah, it's not. This is holding about as well as, let's see, I guess you could say, let me think of some things that held. Well, think of something, Maddie. Think of something that held. Something sharp.
A command strip on the wall.
Yeah, or this held about as well as a piece of Scotch tape after you get it a little dirty. That's about how well this defensive position held, trying to come up with something PG. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the northern flank of the Bakhmut battlefield. And as we can see, things are carrying on just fine and dandy in that part of the front line. And hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to encircle the city not before long, maybe in a few weeks. We're now going to be moving on down into the area just south of Orlivka, where we saw that the 8th Brigade was able to repel a Russian attack today. Yo, we got to get down.
A bop.
Dude, that's an absolute bop. Dude, talk about the bop it toy, because this thing is bopping, twisting, and pulling it.
All right.
Cue a certain president from the 90s. I did not. But as you can see, the Russians trying to push forward, and we can now see the artillery firing right in front of them. It appears that one of them was hit in the part of the video that lagged. We are now watching a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation at 2 frames per second, and we can see that one of the vehicles has been knocked out. The second one is continuing to press forward until it too was blown up. We can now see the remains of both of the vehicles sitting in the field, and it appears that there are no Russians coming out of them. Actually, we can see that one of them somehow was recovered, I believe. And we now see something else exploding a little bit down the way. Take a look at that.
Well, that was Russian morale.
Uh-oh. there goes the reinforcements. And so it looks like they're burning as well. And I'm going to laugh my way through this, and there went the nuclear explosion. And probably about 10 Russian crew members with it. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I'm not laughing, I'm crying for these poor guys. It's very sad that they invaded this foreign country. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the area just south of Orlivka and on down into the area of Pisky. And we know that the Russians are pissed off today as they were not able to push forward, and every single vehicle in the area, from what it appears that was involved in the push, was destroyed. Here's the first clip showing a BMD, or a BMB too, being destroyed along with his entire column. When you see them trying to advance forward, you now see the BMD roasting right over there like a bunch of peanuts at a baseball game. We can now see another one having a small nuclear explosion after it ran over a mine. And we can now see the column advancing forward. We can see that BMD-2 is still roasting out there, about at a fairly good speed, but not as good of a speed as the roast that we put down on the Russians about last week. I'm trying to make sure that's as PG as possible, but now we can see the entire destroyed column here. And also, Matthew, we can see that little destroyed, I forgot what it was called, but it was one of only 2 that the Ukrainians have been able to capture. And we can see another example that appears to have not been captured, but outright destroyed. Always good to see. We love to see it. We're now going to be moving on to our next clip where we saw some Russian equipment exploding under a bridge. This, once again, like I said earlier, does appear to become the Russians' most favorite habitat at this point in the war. It's a natural habitat for them, and we can see the explosion coming out of both sides at the bottom of the bridge. Kind of like how Taco Bell comes out of both sides after you get done eating it. Here's the clip. Oh, it's the song!
Hey! Now bounce.
Oh, bounced. Not today. And we can see the equipment burning on the bridge. And
oh dear.
And man, what an explosion.
Does that mean he's not coming on then?
I think it means that they are not coming on. And we can actually see that that's near the Donetsk airfield as well. So let's figure out where that is. We know where that is now. We know. So, let's go down to the Donetsk. Here is the airfield, and it appears that that bridge would have been... that's not it. Where is it? Maybe right there? That's like a sewer grate. Maybe right... Nope. Nah, not right there. So it's not that far down. It looks like it may have been up here. Maybe right there? Nah. So let's see. Airfield. Tree. So... let's play GeoGuessr here for a minute. So there's a block of trees somewhere in the distance. Let's see if there's anything else interesting that we can note about this. Thick tree line. Okay. Thick tree line right there.
Thick.
Man, thick with 2 C's, I'm telling you. Let's see here. If I took a guess, somewhere around here. Because we can see the airfield back there, but we can't really see much more than that. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip. We know it's in that general area, however, so we'll just move it up there a little bit. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our third clip, where we saw a Russian attack in that area was stopped today. This is the longer video of what we just saw with the BMD-2 getting burned, but I wanted to make sure to show it to y'all because it's a nice clip. We can see a T-80 moving along as some Russians move forward, and we can see that drainage ditch right there, it seems. And that tank is absolutely booking it. Probably straight into its own doom.
This doesn't look very smart for it.
No, it doesn't. Wide open field? No, that's not that smart. That's where armor operates, but operating like that, not smart.
They must not like this guy very much.
Nah, they told him to race forward to the front until he encounters enemy fire, and then hold until relieved. No one's going to relieve him, and the enemy fire is going to be a little too much.
And he's happily going forward, too. Chugga chugga.
Man, this guy is rolling forward a little bit faster than some people are rolling right into those incredibly high interest rates.
Oh, man.
Man, I got to tell you, people can feel his pain now. They're really about to see what that pain results in. I gotta say, man, that thing is smoking up a light little amount. It's kind of like a vapor, really, just making its way through the fields. I'm sure everyone knows that annoying vapor. You know, the one that's got to do, like, the vape tricks and stuff. That's what that tank's doing right there. And I'm sure y'all also have that friend as well who doesn't like jokes like that, and to them, just tell them to live with it. And we can see the tank continuing to roll forward. It appears it's not really being backed up by anyone anywhere. The APCs have left it on its own, and we can see one artillery shell land a little further back. Its time is nigh. Ruh-roh. Bad decisions I made. Consequences I'll have. It blows up.
They're beginning to understand the idea why they were sent forward first.
Man, they're learning what messing around and finding out means. That's an overused line nowadays. Really, people need to come up with a new one.
Break out the chart, mess around, plus find out, your odds go up.
So let's see. He's messing around a good bit right now, and he's not really finding out. But the further we move up the graph, the more you'll be finding out.
Dang,
And-
what's the explosion already in this video? This is 6 minutes long.
Dang! All right. Well, actually, believe it or not, it doesn't really look like there's a massive explosion in this, but as you can see right here, here's a part of their failed offensive. We did see the summarized clip just a second ago, so y'all get the picture. If y'all want to see that, just go click on the link in the description below. Y'all be able to see it. I promise you. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to the area of Mospinye, where we saw that a pantsir was blown up around here. And we can see the pantsir right back there. Man, that thing is toasted. Somebody whip out the butter because that bread is toasted. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip. Great to see. And we're now going to be moving all the way to Kyiv because we've covered all the news. That's actually the last bit of news that was in the Donetsk area. There's nothing that came from the southern front today and no frontline activity as well. So we've covered everything north to south, east to west, and now it's time for us to go to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on such an amazing night with such an incredible fundraiser. He got all the way up to 6.5 thousand, an incredible figure.
Hey.
And of course, it is time for the speech from President Zelensky while he rides on this plane. It was only 2 minutes long, and it appears that flying on a jet is not his style, considering that this is the shortest address we've ever seen. And so with that, here's the clip.
І українці завершимо цей дуже непростий, але дуже важливий тиждень. В п'ятницю Ліга Арабських Держав, субота і неділя G7 плюс Україна і ще розширений формат 7 плюс партнери, зокрема глобальний Південь плюс Україна. Інтенсивно світ чує нашу позицію, захист і гарантії безпеки, повернення усіх наших територій, усіх наших людей, справедливість, реалізація нашої формули миру. В кожному суттєвому для України пункту маємо розуміння зі світової більшості і разом будемо збільшувати український потенціал. Цієї суботи День науки в Україні, і ще більше ми даємо Україні можливості, то більше ми даємо і усім, хто працює у цій шляхетній сфері. Я вітаю всіх наших науковців. Сьогодні, в неділю, тут, в Хіросімі, Україна була дійсно почесним учасником роботи Великої Сімки. Українська тематика центральна, шана до всіх українців, особливо дякую Сімці. Зустріч із президентом Байденом, і, як завжди, стаємо сильніше після таких переговорів. Зустріч із лідером Індонезії, змістовно. Зустріч з президентом Республіки Корея. Є потенціал для міцних відносин. Зустріч з прем'єр-міністром Канади Трюдо. Дякую, Джастіну, тобі. Поспілкувався із лідерами В'єтнаму та Австралії. Окремо і детально говорили з прем'єр-міністром Японії. Будемо посилювати співпрацю. Була і дуже важлива церемонія та звернення Музею миру в Хіросімі. Наша єдність зі світом, наш захист для українців та наша сила, сила української держави буде і найбільш достойним вшануванням пам'яті наших людей, різних поколінь, чиє життя було зламане та розтоптане російським злом. Цією багатолітньою тиранією, яка змінює форму, але впливає однаково жорстоко. Сьогодні День пам'яті жертв політичних репресій, День пам'яті усіх, хто був вбитий за роки радянського режиму. Не забувайте, що було, не забуваємо, кого втратили, не забуваємо, що ми зобов'язані бути сильними, будемо завжди. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech. And Slava Ukraini from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 452nd day of the war. And of course, that is the end of our news summary for the night. I thank every single one of you all so much once again for showing up tonight for this amazing Sunday fundraiser and also the news as well. It has been an incredible night. We were able to raise a whopping $6.6 thousand in support of Doctors Without Borders. And it's absolutely incredible to think that once again we've been able to blow past a fundraiser goal like that again, and have been able to help save so many lives in Ukraine thanks to Doctors Without Borders and also all of y'all's massive support as well. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for helping out this fundraiser to get to where it was tonight, and also, once again, keeping Ukraine in mind and being with us as we cover the news about the people we were helping out with that fundraiser again tonight. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our polls. We're also going to be calling them out, We're going to call out the top donors in between the last question segment and this one, and then we're going to be in a question segment for the remainder of this stream. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and real quick, let me call out our top donors since the last time we called them out. We have a 50 from Trister1, a 50 from Darren Menard. We also have one from Nguyen, Jean Kustra, John Webster, Marion Deemert, and Epic Trains Canada. And once again, big thanks to all of you. $6,597 is the total thus far, and I'm sure we'll probably hit even higher than that before the night's out. But big thanks to you all once again.
And of course, thank you to every single person who helped this fundraiser to get to where it was tonight. If it wasn't for folks like y'all, these fundraisers wouldn't be possible. And it's unbelievable to think the Late Spring Army has been able to blow well beyond its goals every single time we've ever run a fundraiser. And I have to thank every single one of y'all once again for keeping Ukraine in mind. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. I love how people, Matthew, come up with a stupid comment like that. You must love the sound of your own voice. Well, it is my own.
I actually do.
It is my own.
do.
It is my own show, and I do get told by a lot of people I have a radio man voice, so it is kind of soothing. And also, it's my show, dumbass. Of course, we're going to be the only people talking on our own show. And you know, sometimes we got to.
Of course, you're lashing out.
I got to tell you, man. Sometimes we just got to keep it real up in here. Thank you for the complaint. I'll send that up the board. Let me go get the manager of the stream real quick. All right, I'm here, and he can kiss her ass. And so with that, we're on to the questions, or the polls, more like.
All right, and moving into our polls, the first one says, Zelensky claims that now is a crucial moment for the fate of Ukraine, and is this political talk or reality? 69%, have no idea how that happens, said it is reality and now is critical. 11% said unsure. 11% said it is somewhat. And 10% said it's not critical right now, and wait. And I would say that right now is still a critical moment. We're still in the midst of either the very beginning of the counteroffensive or in the early stages of the actual offensive itself. So right now is definitely a defining moment for the war, and the next month or so is going to be very, very influential on the rest of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, can you reread that poll prompt?
Zelensky claims that now is a crucial moment for the fate of Ukraine, and is this political talk or is it reality?
I would say it's kind of political talk. I would say it's not really exactly a crucial moment at this exact moment. Every moment is crucial in this war, and this one isn't that exceptional beyond the rest. So I would say it's mostly political talk, in my opinion, or to most likely continue to get support. There's nothing wrong with that, obviously understandable, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and I hope we address that poll fairly well.
All right, and up next we have a poll that says, Zelensky said that Hiroshima reminds me of Bakhmut, and do you agree with the statement? It looks like 54% said yes, he's right, 8% said, 8% said unsure, and 25% said, it's a questionable comparison, and 13% said, no, that's not a good one. And I have to say, that was kind of questionable to me. I'm not sure if he meant to say it in that context or not, but Hiroshima is not at all like Bakhmut, in my opinion. Hiroshima was a completely different circumstance because Japan was trying to attack the U.S. We came in with an atomic bomb to put an end to the whole thing. It was a pretty extreme move, I will grant that, but it was justified, in my opinion. In Bakhmut, the Russians are not justified whatsoever in doing anything there, so I'm not really sure if I see the comparison. But it sounds like maybe a reporter kind of forced him to say it, so he might not have meant it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say Bakhmut doesn't have anything on Hiroshima. Everyone has to remember, let me pull up a picture of Hiroshima real quick. Hiroshima, 1945. The average temperature was pretty hot during that month, and also
5,000.
Yeah, it was pretty warm, and that's what Hiroshima looked like after the atomic bombing. I would say that while Bakhmut has been decently destroyed, I don't think it compares to Hiroshima after the atomic bombing. On top of that, 70,000 people died in this town, civilians. And also, another thing is, is that the Japanese were the aggressors in this war, and then the United States ended up using the nukes to try and end it a little bit sooner. So I'd honestly say that it's different, not just by the context of why it was bombed, but also the amount of damage and civilian deaths that were had in the city. I would say that it is not really anything comparable. And also considering that this happened twice, it didn't just happen to Hiroshima, it also happened to Nagasaki, pictured here. I would also say that that was pretty different. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And I'm also, considering that I do absolutely love the sound of my own voice, I'm going to make it as soothing as possible, so that way it sounds more like ASMR than war news. And so with that, I hope we address that fairly well, and I hope y'all enjoy that little picture of Nagasaki right there. Nagasaki was, believe it or not, for the longest time, the only port city in the entirety of Japan that Western traders could trade through. It was actually the Portuguese that were allowed a small trading settlement within the port city of Nagasaki in the 1600s, and the town largely grew around it. It wasn't until the 1850s, under Oliver Hazard Perry, who would open up the borders of Japan through gunboat diplomacy, under the president at the time, Millard Fillmore, that Japan would then begin to trade with the Western world at large. And so with that, I hope that does give y'all a little bit of an extra fun fact about the city of Nagasaki as we move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one says, Russia's ambassador says an attack on Crimea is considered an attack upon Russia, and what are your thoughts? 45% said Russia will perceive it that way, 5% said unsure, 4% said, it's possibly a real red line, and 46% said, Russia is bluffing once again. And considering all the bluffs that Russia have done, I wouldn't be shocked if this was another one. However, I will say that a lot of experts and analysts have said that Crimea could be the actual red line for Russia. Russia does run their mouth quite a bit, but I'm sure they do have a real red line somewhere, and Crimea could possibly be it. The only other red line I can think of that would be a real one would be attacking Moscow with missiles directly and blowing up the middle of the city. But then again, we haven't seen any signs that's going to happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be honest with you, Matthew. I would personally say that attacking Crimea is not attacking Russia at all, whatsoever. Crimea has been a part of Ukraine for an incredibly long time, and ever since the Ukrainians have become an independent state in 1991, Crimea has been theirs the entire time. And so it would make absolutely no sense for the Russians to falsely claim that an attack upon Crimea is an attack upon Russia, because it doesn't even compare. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next poll and last poll says, U.S. officials say that Ukraine has promised not to use F-16s on Russian soil, and is this reasonable? 54% said the U.S. is wise for the restrictions, 7% said unsure, 21% said I'm somewhat mixed on it, and 18% said the U.S. is overstepping with this. And I'm going to be totally honest. I can understand why they put the restrictions in place, but if you're going to give F-16s, you should understand that Ukraine should be able to use them however they want to use them. That should be an understanding. So I'm somewhat mixed on it. I could go either way at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would honestly have to say, Matthew, and boy, I gotta tell you, man, I just love the sound of my voice. It's incredible. But really though, Matthew, there's so many other speakers that have to have a moment on this channel. But I must insist, we must continue talking. Like there's anyone else to talk, dude. That always blows me away when they say that, though. Really, because it's like, how in the hell can you really like say that? Anyways, moving on from that. Anyways. I would say that the Ukrainians shouldn't be able to use those against Russia, because then it looks like we're directly involved in the war for the most part. So I would say, nah, I understand why we're putting that limitation there, and I think that it's a pretty normal thing. Also, reread the poll prompt again just to make sure I heard it correctly.
Yes, just a second. Gotta get back over here to the photos. Let's see. It said, U.S. officials say that Ukraine has promised not to use F-16s on Russian soil, and is it reasonable?
Yes, so I made sure to address that, and so I would say it is reasonable. I just had to make sure I got that poll prompt correct. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and before we move on to our live chat questions, another shout out to this time to Super Bunker 9000 who puts in a 50, as well as Axel K who puts in a 50, and Cliff H who also puts in a 50. And thank you all three very much for the generosity. We're now up to 6,754. Maybe we'll hit 7,000, maybe. But once again, thank you all.
And thank you all so much once again. Matthew just left me hanging right there. And I thank you all so much for helping us to nearly get up to $7,000. Absolutely incredible. And once again, saving a lot of lives. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our live chat questions. Up first, we have one from the live chat that I just saw from Lauren, who says, if the U.S. won't give the planes directly to Ukraine, how can they add restrictions to the end use?
Because the United States, any country that produces a weapon has a pretty good say over how those weapons can be used. Because if a country like Poland sends an F-16 to Ukraine and then the Ukrainians use that F-16 on Russia, then the United States won't sell Poland any more F-16s. And so the Polish will also ensure that Ukraine doesn't do that either. That's kind of like how the Germans, for the large part, were able to send Leopard 2s to other countries and then tell them if they could or couldn't send those to Ukraine. It's kind of the same principle. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. Oh no, Matthew. Do you see that? Oh no. Someone's about to get vertigo because I'm about... Oh, Matthew gave him vertigo because he just smacked their ass silly. Anyway, and so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Stephen Hilvers, who says, if the Russians continue at the current rate of being KIA, will the orcs eventually go extinct as an entire species?
I don't think they'll go extinct as a nation or anything like that, but it will certainly have a decent dent in their population, I guess you could say growth numbers. They're already negative, actually, believe it or not, at least on an overall trend, but it's mostly going to get worse as time goes on, considering that 200,000 mostly young men were killed, and those young men would most likely go on to have families and children, and now there will be no children or families that come out of this war due to the 200,000 or so young Russian men that have been killed. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Mark, General of the LSA, and it feels very good to finally say General of the LSA, but he's been deserving of it for such a long time. And Mark says, doesn't mean the F-16 must stay in Ukraine, but could shoot an A-2A missile at the bombers about to launch an attack from 100 miles inside of Russia. That way, the F-16 never crossed the border.
I don't really know if that would qualify or not qualify. I feel like that's kind of like one of those very tough and difficult questions to answer, because it's kind of like a case-by-case basis thing. I wouldn't know the answer to that, because the F-16 would be attacking inside of Russia with a missile, but it would never have gone into Russia. But at the same time, they could justify attacking Kursk under that same objective, and I have a feeling that that's not permitted. So I would say most likely they wouldn't be able to do that, but it is an interesting question, and one I don't really have a clear answer to. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Super Grover, who says, did you hear about the explosive device that was sent to the female propagandist and what it looked like?
I did not. So
I can take a hunch.
I can take a hunch, considering the context of a female was put in there. So I can take a pretty good hunch of probably what it was, but I did not specifically hear about that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, our next one goes to Kanti Luden, who says, is Bakhmut useless to Russia without the ability to use the train station for supplies?
Bakhmut was useless to Russia since the start of the battle. Going over there and showing this. One, they can't be used as a railway corridor because the railroads either are so close to Ukrainian lines right now, or the Ukrainians are fighting over those railroad lines that could never be used. And secondly, there is no way they could use it as an actual supply hub that would give them any extra advantage over what they already had. Bakhmut is as effective as a supply hub as Popasna would be, and Popasna was hardly an effective supply hub. So there isn't really anything that Bakhmut is adding to the Russian supply situation that gives them an extra upper hand or an advantage, and so it really has no strategic value to them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we address that fairly well.
Yeah, and I hope we did. And also, y'all see the flood of bots coming in. I said in the chat, bots out here catching L's like it's going out of style or something. They're getting banned out of this chat so fast, it's not even funny.
Man, I'm telling you, I keep on seeing them hop in. I actually saw that one was here for a while, and like I says, Wagner has took Bakhmut and they're now winning, although they're leaving by the 25th. It's like you can't be winning if you're not even there. That's like saying, man, I sat there and caught this giant largemouth bass in Alabama while I'm in North Carolina. It's like, well, you're just stupid. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next question is going to go to M. from Boise, who says, have you heard of the Ukrainian female sniper? Her name is Emerald, the Joan of Arc of Ukraine, and she has a nonprofit for female fighters.
I have not heard about that sniper. We usually don't focus on individual people in the war. We just focus on the war at large, largely because, like, for example, this is the best example I could give at the very beginning of the war. Although she is Ukrainian, a famous Canadian sniper called Wally went to Ukraine, and he went over there and he realized this wasn't Afghanistan where he was going to be taking pot shots at untrained insurgents, and it was a full-on war in between two conventional armies. It was as conventional as a war can get. He didn't really like that much because it put him in a lot more danger, and then he went back to Canada, trashed on the Ukrainians, and then months later, after the situation stabilized, he then went back and acted like he didn't say any of that stuff. And so that was a precedent at the beginning of the war that let us know it was a good idea not to talk about individuals, because who knows what those individuals would do or say. So I haven't heard about that specific sniper. And very interesting to hear that they have a nonprofit. However, I can't really plug it because unless if it's a registered 501 nonprofit with a proper paperwork here in the United States, we usually don't back up nonprofits. We have a very specific thing to go through that spill about how we support different kinds of nonprofits. We do not support individual Patreons of random people out there who say they're helping out Ukraine, because there's no guaranteed way for us to know whether they're helping out Ukraine or not. Many of y'all may actually know the stories, the horror stories from GoFundMe, where you'll hear about some guy who's like homeless on the side of the street, and you know he's like lost a leg because a car hit him or something, and then a GoFundMe pops up for him. It raises like $1 million in a day, and then the GoFundMe money never goes to that guy or anything, and the person who ran the GoFundMe disappears off the face of the earth. That can also happen here in the Ukraine war as well, and I'm not saying that that is an untrustworthy nonprofit, but if we started to enter the realm of supporting particular nonprofits that were just set up by people without proper paperwork and not others, then we're going to have people coming in here asking us to support Uncle Larry's nonprofit, and then they're going to get butthurt when we don't. So unfortunately, I can't really.
Uncle Larry, he ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, Uncle Larry ruined it for everyone. So sadly, we can't really plug nonprofits like that unless if it's a registered 501 nonprofit here in the United States that we can run through YouTube Give and is registered by the GuideStar program. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Murdyaba Ruka, who says, what is the possibility of taking Sevastopol by Christmas or early 2024?
I wouldn't know. I would say it's probably, honestly, I think that would actually be a little unlikely, especially at the current speed. Now that could change, and it could definitely become possible by that time frame. But right now, based off of how things are looking, I would assume it will probably be a good bit into next year by the time we actually saw Sevastopol being taken. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to JC, who says, do you believe that the Ruski propagandists are just priming Ruski society for a more war-centered economy?
I don't think they're trying to prime them for a more war-centered economy. They're more so complaining about the shortcomings of the Russian army and the Russian government at large. And I don't think they're really trying to prep the Russian public for anything, because we've never seen the Russian state TV prep the public for anything, even the partial mobilization, which was about the largest thing that affected the public at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, also I saw someone say that a certain nonprofit is registered as a 501c. And real quick, I want to show you what that would mean for us. I don't even think I could really do that right now, but let me just go and double check just to make sure. So let me go to the giving section, and let me see if I can go and just, I can't. So just to show y'all this, unless if I wanted to go and delete a fundraiser, I can't go and see if that one is registered under GuideStar's program or not, because if I click this, it says we're limited to 50 fundraisers. So we have to go through and we have to delete one of these fundraisers and then try and create a new one to see if that one is registered or not. Sadly, there's no other way for me to check, because that's the only way I can get into the guidestar.org system, is to try and set up a new fundraiser. So sadly, I can't check that one right now, but I will be trying to check it out after the stream. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Go ahead.
And also, I even go a step further. Even though it's registered as a 501c, a nonprofit, it still has to be in existence long enough to have some filings that we can review. I was reached out or contacted by one person that had a 501c that they had just founded and wanted us to fundraise for it, but they didn't have any filings yet. So we have to be able to review something to have some kind of track record to make sure that the funds are being spent properly.
And so real quick, actually, I just pulled up GuideStar, and I believe that one was called Liberty Ukraine, and this will tell us whether we can actually run one for them or not. So they actually, this one right here, let's see, Ukraine, Liberty Ukraine Foundation. So, according to GuideStar, I believe this is the same GuideStar that YouTube uses, there is a Liberty Ukraine Foundation. They have around $2.6 million in gross receipts and around $890,000 in assets. So it is entirely possible that we might be able to run a fundraiser for Liberty Ukraine, but that's if it shows up on the guidestar.org system when I go and manage a fundraiser. Because sometimes I have seen a couple of fundraisers that people said that did show up in GuideStar a long time ago in the war, and I would try and run it through YouTube, but for some reason they wouldn't recognize that one in particular. It is a little bit of a finicky system, but we will see if this one is possible in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I want to remind everyone, because some people also go, wait, you could run it, it's a nonprofit. It has to be in GuideStar. If it's not in GuideStar, we can't run it. There's no way in hell we can run it, because that's the only way a YouTube Give fundraiser works, is that it has to be a registered nonprofit in GuideStar system, so that way YouTube can manage the account properly and then send it to the nonprofit, and they do that through GuideStar. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Stephen White, who says, since Wagner is leaving to rest and re-equip, how fast do you think that Ukraine can encircle Bakhmut and retake the city?
I would say that Ukraine could probably encircle Bakhmut maybe in a month's time, at the longest, I believe, or more so. I wouldn't really know. Once again, crystal balling isn't really a strong suit of anyone's, because, predicting the future is a really difficult thing to do. But I would say that probably around a month, maybe more, maybe less, would probably be needed for them to encircle Bakhmut. It's going to take a while, but, ooh, yikes, 1 second. We got a little creature up in here. It's like a freaking Animal Planet. But I would say the chances of something like that happening probably around a month. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, while I try and keep a track of this freaking millipede that's on the floor. And with that, we were on to the next one.
And our next question is going to go to Happy Dragon, who says, is it true that 100,000 Russians went to sleep in Bakhmut alone?
100,000 Russians? Don't know about that. Zov's about to die. Oh, there he went. He just got the axe.
Man, Zov got stugned.
Man, he got nuked. To answer that question, I would say reread the line. What happened?
Is it true that 100,000 Russians went to sleep in Bakhmut alone?
We believe it's somewhere around 40 to 50,000. 100,000 would be far too much. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Donna Olson, who says, is Zelensky back in Ukraine, or is he on his way back now?
I would say he is on his way back, because the speech was just made, I think, a few hours ago, and he was on a plane. So he's most likely on the way back at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
Excuse me. And the next one goes to Pedro Martins Costa, who says, if Ukraine starts running out of soldiers, how likely you guys think that U.S. and other NATO countries will deploy their soldiers into the battle?
And can you reread that one again? Because I'm trying to keep a track of this thing. It's not a millipede, it's a centipede. It's the one that actually bites. So I'm trying to make sure it doesn't bite me. So can you reread that one again?
Just step on it.
Dude, I'm barefoot. No, I'm not stepping
on it. Step on it anyway.
One second, let me
be a man.
Be a man. Yeah, I'm going to get the Mossberg here and just crunch it with a stock. 1 second. Let me go take
Do
care
what you gotta
of
do.
it.
It's a Russian bot. No, it's a Russian bug. A nasty bug. Incompetent bug. It went the wrong way. Now it's getting smushed. I can't hear it, but oh, yep, it's got. Oh, there it went. Oh man.
And yeah, I got it. There we go. All right, problem solved. Let's get this question answered. What was the question?
If Ukraine starts running out of soldiers, how likely do you guys think that U.S. and other NATO countries will deploy their soldiers into the battle?
Most likely unlikely in that situation. We probably wouldn't deploy soldiers unless they got nuked, gassed, or a biological warfare attack was conducted on them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Franco Lacona, who says, any idea which country invited or accepted to lobby for Ukraine attending the G7 meeting?
I would say that probably everyone was really positive in their outlook in Ukraine coming to the G7 meeting. Really, the only one that would be kind of indifferent to it would be India, but they're not openly hostile to it. So I think really everyone was fine with Ukraine showing up. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jim Smith, who says, how did the troops in Transnistria get supplied? I take it Moldova are not helping them, and Slav Ukraine, kind sirs.
And Slovenia. And to answer that question, I believe the troops in Transnistria are being supplied locally, and most likely are just keeping up their current cache of supplies, because there's really no other way to get supplies to them. Because they would have to fly them in, and there's no way to fly them in at the moment, because they'd have to fly over Ukrainian or NATO airspace, and flying over NATO airspace would get them most likely shot down, and flying over Ukraine's airspace would certainly get them shot down. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Jesse, who says, is it weird that the only notable gains for the Russian side the past few months are from the Wagner PMC, and what has the Russian army itself been up to except digging in?
The Russian army itself has not been able to do much of anything. They've made some incredibly minor advances around Avdiivka, and they've also been pushed back around Bakhmut, but it appears along the rest of the lines, they're just stabilized in their positions and trying to dig in, like you said, for a defensive. That appears to be the case across the entirety of the front line, and the Russian army has not really been able to do much rather than lose ground ever since the first opening month or two of the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from John Vanzo, who says, did Ukraine retreat from Bakhmut so that Wagner could claim victory and then leave?
Maybe. But I have a feeling that probably isn't the case, because usually a country doesn't want to give up ground no matter what, because that ground is a currency. Ground held is lives lost by the enemy in the future. And so I have a feeling that Ukraine wouldn't really want to voluntarily give up the land in Bakhmut, because then that means that they're giving up potential. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And what the hell was that comment that you just got rid of? I mean, like, that isn't even about Ukraine. That's just some weird stuff. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sazabi, who says, expanding on yesterday's topic on Bakhmut strategic value, historically important battles happen in less strategic places like Gettysburg. And what says the enforcer?
And can you reread that one again?
Sure. Expanding on yesterday's topic on Bakhmut strategic value, historically, important battles happen in less strategic places like Gettysburg, and what says the enforcer?
I would agree, actually. I would say that would be true, because Bakhmut is not an important town. It's a lot like Gettysburg. There isn't really any inherent strategic value in the city of Gettysburg. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I agree with you right there. Bakhmut has about as much value as Gettysburg. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Driving in Luton, who says, did you know someone actually calculated that the Wagner offensive in Bakhmut moves slower than a snail can move? A snail would have got past Mykolaiivka in the time that Wagner has taken.
Really? That's pretty crazy to hear. I wouldn't doubt it, really. Let me go find Bakhmut again. Where is it? There we go. Mykolaiivka. Where in the world would Mykolaiivka be? Everyone's always saying Mykolaiivka. I can never find Mykolaiivka. Huh. Let's see here. Let's figure that out, though. That should be an easy calculation to do. We just need to measure the distance and then figure it out. So they started about here. Well, how in the hell do we measure? Oh, yeah, we got to get the little measuring stick out. So they started here. They made it here. That is 11 kilometers. total. Well, 11.5 kilometers total. So how fast does a snail move? So a snail moves at 0.03 miles per hour. So let's get 11.5 kilometers in miles. So that's 7.14 miles. So if we were to multiply 7.14 miles by 0.03 miles per hour, 7.14 times 0.03. Let's see. Hang on. That's probably not the right calculation. Let's see here. 7.14 miles. And let's think here, Matthew. Times 0.03. I feel like that ought to give the answer. And I think it is. I think it's saying that that would be like 214 days, which means that...
You did 7.14 divided by 0.03?
Oh, let's see. Divided by 0.03. Oh, here we go. 238 days. And so going off of where we say that they started on the deep state map, which was about right here near Pokrovsk, and where they got to in Bakhmut, it would have taken a snail, going at its normal speed, 238 days, which is exactly as long as it took for it to make it to the very edge of Bakhmut. So, at least according to our calculations, the Wagner unit throughout the course of the entire battle truly did move at a snail's pace. That's insane. That it's literally living up to the name at a snail's pace. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And you know, like those memes where people will like morph their face into a horse and stuff. Nutsack is like putting on that snail like filter, morphing his face into a snail at this point.
Wait. Hold up, Matthew. Everyone just told me that was 238 hours. That wasn't days. That was 238 hours. So now we have to divide that by 24. And instead of it taking 8.3 months, a snail would actually cover that distance in almost 10 days.
No.
Yeah. 10 days it would have taken for a snail to get all the way from Pokrovsk to the very end of Bakhmut. So actually...
That's actually quick for a snail.
Yeah, that actually is really quick for a snail. So, that's interesting. If it only takes it that long to get there, it only takes it that long to go 7.1 miles. Hell, the snail would actually be on to Konstantinivka in 20 days. And in 20 days... the Wagner had hardly even made it towards Soledar. That's sad. That really is sad. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Oh, wait a minute. Did they say Mykolaievka earlier? Or Mykolaiv?
They said Mykolaievka.
Mykolaievka. Let me type in Mykolaievka. Mykolaievka. Because that may be... let's see. Where is Mykolaievka in the Donetsk Oblast? So there's Mykolaievka. So they would have been all the way on to there. And there's Bakhmut. How, honestly, I would expect it to be well beyond that even. I would say that they were, that snail's on its way to Mykolaiv, more like. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for sharing that crazy little fun fact with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Happy Dragon, who says, do you think that Japan has forgiven the USA for the horrible act of war for dropping the A-bomb? I mean, that's one way to look at it.
I would say more so the United States has forgiven them for launching a surprise attack on sailors in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, and then having to go through a grueling 4-year war after that because they attacked us. I would say more so we've forgiven them more so than they've forgiven us. Because you see, when you attack someone, you don't get the right to ask them for forgiveness. You have the right to ask for forgiveness. That's how that works. Because otherwise, that means that the Ukrainians are going to have to start apologizing to the Russians for killing Russians in the invasion of Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to JC the Music Man, who says, if Ukraine is receiving F-16s from other countries, then why would they try to dictate what targets they can hit?
Because the United States made those F-16s and sold those to those foreign countries, and so if they want to have the chance of buying American weapons again, they have to make sure to do what we say with them, so that way they can have the chance to continue to buy them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cliff H, who says, any recent news regarding the Ukraine forces that crossed the river near Kherson and established a minor beachhead in the swampy area a couple of weeks ago?
that appears to have been a short-term event. It appears that they moved over there, they held a small area, and either they were pushed out or they retreated back across the river, because we don't see it anymore, and we don't hear of any activity or action happening there either. So that was a very short-lived thing, and largely expected to be a short-lived thing. But still, it was surprising nonetheless to see that they even attempted anything on that side of the river. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And believe it or not, somehow we have worked our way down to one last question. We have gone through, believe it or not, 32 live chat questions. So would you like to go ahead and do the whole sequence?
And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who asked the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Nick Moore, who says, if Ukraine drives the Russians out, do you think that Russia would continue firing missiles into Ukraine?
They may. It may be something kind of like North and South Korea have against each other, but I have a feeling that would be pretty few and far in between, and we may actually see that the war ends once they're pushed out of Ukraine, because there wouldn't really be any reason for them to continue to fight. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you subscribe, that makes us really happy, and lets us know that people enjoy what we do. And we do this 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single night except for Monday, covering the past 24 hours of the war. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. I will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, I'll see you all then. And of course, long live the LSA and Slava Ukraini.
And good night, Slav Ukraine, and congratulations on another successful fundraiser. Yeah!
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Ooh.